he left a great body of work. The recordings are fantastic. So,
It was just so surprising
oh
and
man,
such a rare illness,
yeah,
and, I think it evokes that reminder that any of us could go at any time.
I know, I know. So play every gig like it's your last, and one day you'll be right.
And yeah, and play every record
Yeah,
like you won't get a chance again.
that's right.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on Life and Surround. I'm here with my friend Mark Doyle of Mark Doyle and the Maniacs, Mary Falls band leader, ranger, composer, guitarist, but most importantly to me, all around friendly guy. And today we're going to be talking about Jeff Beck, and I'm familiar with really a small fraction of his recordings, and mostly those that were released at some point in multi-channel. So his four quad recordings, live at Ronnie Scott's on Blu-ray. He was the guitarist for Roger Waters' "Amused to Death," and that got released on SACD and Blu-ray. And I'm familiar with some other stuff like the Truth album, but Mark has a much deeper history and connection with Jeff Beck's music. So I'm delighted that he's here today. And without further ado, let's discuss Jeff Beck's music, including his multi-channel recordings, and just man, I don't know, try to get on with the healing process, really.
Yeah, I mean, boy, what a shock. Came completely out of the blue. He always seemed so healthy. I mean, even when everybody was taking drugs and carrying on, and skinny as a rail, he always had, he was always sort of working out, had his arms, and uh, from everything I've gathered, wasn't a big druggie, big drinker, or anything like that. Seemed really healthy, and so yeah, it was a very big shock. And like I wrote you, I haven't really been able to. Ordinarily, for an interview like this, I would have been catching up on all of my different history and stuff, but I haven't been able to listen to him, and ever since I heard the news. I mean, I have listened to him because people have been doing tributes, and there have been things online. But boy, it really cuts deep. I mean, as I said, I mean, I really feel like I've lost the last real hero that I had. Um, and in terms of being a guitar player and coming up sort of simultaneously, I'm in a generation removed from him, but from when he first came out, I mean, there was nothing like the Yardbirds. I mean, the English bands like the Stones and the Kinks, and they were playing what was called rhythm and blues in those days, which was basically just American blues, um, and sort of fed back to us by these English guys. And so, yeah, I mean, they were doing some really cool stuff. And but in 1965, when Heartful of Soul came out, I can't think of anything else that was on the horizon on AM radio uh, that had that sort of fuzz guitar playing a sitar lick. I guess the Yardbirds had. So we're talking about the Yardbirds, his first band for all
Right.
practical purposes. But I guess they had a sitar player in the studio, and he completely, it just was all wrong. And then Jeff Beck just said, "I think I can do that," and came up with that great hook. And also, basically, when it came time for the guitar solo, he played the vocal melody, which in that sort of singing sound of his, which
Right.
is another unusual thing that nobody had really done up until that point. But it just shows that his approach, really from the beginning, was a very lyrical sort of singing approach. Besides the fact that he was a hot rodder and a hot shot and a punk, and so he had that really unique combination of sort of punk violence, tenderness, just he was a revolutionary. You look at Eric Clapton and you look at Jimmy Page and I mean those are the three that came from the Yardbirds.
Right.
And out of all of them, he was the one that was really breaking new ground. I mean, when Shapes of Things came out by the Yardbirds, nobody had ever heard anything like that. Uh, it just blew people's minds. And then, I mean, to me, to this day, probably one of the greatest constructed guitar solos ever is on a song called "Mister You're a Better Man Than I" by the Yardbirds. If you listen to that solo, it's just beautifully constructed. It builds, and there's like tension and release,
He's known
and
as a very melodic player.
yeah, yeah, and so when you listen to him talk about his influences, he was always sort of wacky. Everybody else was talking about Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Chuck Berry. And, he was talking about Cliff Gallup, but he was also talking about Les Paul and Mary Ford. And then, years later, when you saw him do that sort of tribute with Imelda May, where he was playing rockabilly music, I mean, it was so obvious that he had studied it and he could play it to a T. He could
Right.
reproduce it. And so it just, it showed me that he was a student at one time too, whereas I always would listen to him and think this guy is just completely original because I couldn't really pick out any of his influences. Like I remember sitting in my room and copying Eric Clapton and copying Keith Richards solos and all of that, but you could really never copy Jeff Beck. He was just so friggin' weird. And so moving past the Yardbirds on the Truth album, which was the prototype sort of heavy metal record,
I
sort
just
of the
listened to that the other day.
oh my gosh, right? I mean, the blueprint for Led Zeppelin. But yeah, I mean, you listen to his licks on that record playing over blues changes like "Let Me Love You" is one example, and he's not playing blues cliches, he's just playing his own thing. And so it was always super difficult to copy. And his tone and his sort of I think it was more than anything his personality, because he had this sort of puckish sense of humor that pervaded what he was doing. So he would jump into maybe the theme from the Beverly Hillbillies or Woody Woodpecker or something,
Yeah.
when everybody else was sort of taking themselves so seriously. And he just had this sort of wacky personality and a sense of humor.
So I'm curious. You said that you feel like the last of your true heroes is now gone. Who are some of your other heroes that you would also have up in that class of player and musician?
Yeah, I mean, John Lennon, I mean, was probably right at the top of the list, uh, when he was murdered. I mean, that was just that just shattered everybody's innocence. I think everybody sort of grew up when that happened, So musical heroes, Bill Evans, another one who I mean, just he was a piano player, but my dad was a jazz piano player, so really my first
Right.
real hero was Bill Evans. And then I got into rock music, so loved the Beatles, loved the Stones, loved Keith Richards. Real bad example of a role model, but
Unless you want to live forever.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
he's doing something right.
I know.
And I saw a documentary that he did a few years ago where he was really just stripping things down and in a studio with friends and kind of going back to his roots.
Mhm,
And I loved everything about that musical situation, probably more than anything I've heard from the Stones.
mhm.
So he's got, you know, remarkable depth too.
Oh, he sure does. And I remember, geez, when I was in my first band, Free Will, and somebody had met the Stones in Boston. This is probably 1969 on that tour. And they just overheard Jagger and Richards talking, and they said, these are like really learned men. I mean, really, their conversation was so above and beyond any of the people around them. So, and I've heard that many times. Super well read. Um, yeah.
Of Beck's material in multi-channel, what have you acquired and what have you enjoyed?
I mean, I've acquired it all except for Beck Bogart and Appice. Uh,
Really?
I honestly, out of all of that, I never. First of all, I sort of prefer Jeff Beck with English musicians,
Okay.
and I really just wasn't a huge fan of that record. I mean, I've got it on vinyl, and that's fine by me. I've got the original pressing on vinyl.
Yeah, I put on an early pressing in stereo the other night, and I love that record. I really don't have much context to compare it to,
Yeah,
so just taking it for what it is, I enjoy it.
yeah.
And then it also at some point received a DTS CD release,
Mhm.
so like a based on the quad, but kind of a artificial 5.1.
Ah,
And then
okay.
the recent Sony Japan SACD.
Yeah, I did
So
go on Apple Music and check it out,
oh,
uh,
nice. Oh yeah,
and
because
it's fun. You know,
they
it's
put it
fun
up
to
in
go on.
spatial.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
yeah, yeah. So that's out there. But I've got Blow by Blow, and thanks to you, I got the correctly in phase version of Blow by Blow by Acoustic Sounds, right?
Analog Productions.
Analog Productions, yeah.
Yeah,
And I've got that. I've got the two Japanese 7-inch. Actually, more than that. I've got Rough and Ready. I've got the Orange album. I've
Wired.
got Wired. Um, I think that might be it for the Japanese releases.
Yeah, I think so.
Got Yeah, I've got the SHM CD for Roger the Engineer by the Yardbirds, which is killer because it has the whole album in mono and the whole album in stereo, and it sounds fantastic. I mean, that's really, I would recommend that. Um, and then
Okay, so on the topic of recommendations, uh,
mm,
let's get your top Jeff Beck albums.
okay, so you got to have Truth, right?
Absolutely.
Got to have Truth. You got to have Blow by Blow. I mean, I'm talking absolute essentials,
Right.
like ground zero, where to start.
Desert Island.
Um, yeah, um, probably you've got to have Wired, I
Yeah,
think.
I would put Wired up with Blow by Blow.
Yeah, they're sort of a continuation, both produced by George Martin. Um, and then the later stuff was 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 spotty to me because he was always great. I always sort of took issue sometimes with some of the singers that he would use,
Sure.
but I would sort of disregard them, just refer to them as the interruption, and then wait for the guitar solo. But there's great stuff on the one that Nile Rodgers produced, Flash. There's great solos on that. One of them won a Grammy, I think, and that also has People Get Ready. But the '80s production is
Hmm.
sort of jive on that. Emotion and Commotion for his later work. I thought that was a beautiful record because that's got Somewhere Over the Rainbow and um,
I've seen a lot of discussion lately about Beck's Guitar Shop
yeah.
being a lot of people's favorite album. I have never experienced it as far as I remember, so that's one that I intend to track down.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's some great stuff on that.
So a thought crossed my mind, and I just would like to get your perspective on it. Obviously, it's tragic when anybody dies, because it hurts those that love them. And then for somebody who creates music that touches our lives, then we've lost that stream of joy,
Mhm,
that we could still enjoy what's been recorded, but there's no more to come. But when musicians pass, particularly of somebody of this stature, it creates this interest in listening to their music anew. For a lot of people, and I know right now you're grieving and haven't been wanting to put it on, but I think in time you will.
mhm.
But generally, like it causes this renewed interest, and so there's is that a silver lining?
I guess it is. Yeah, yeah. And it's funny. I was thinking the other day about now I'm going to have to listen to him like the way I listen to George Harrison or John Lennon or Tom Petty or David Bowie, you know, Bill Evans, to me, you listen to people in a different way after they're no longer on our mortal coil. Uh, so, yeah, I mean, to me, anything that it's amazing to me that I was with a person, a friend of mine, handyman, and just he was asking me how I was doing, and I was saying, I'm a little bummed out because I just found out that Jeff Beck died, and he goes, Jeff Beck, and it's like, so there are still so many people that don't
Goodness.
even know that name,
Sure.
and so yeah, if it sheds some more light onto him, then yeah, great, and and I think it does wake some people up that maybe have just sort of taken the whole thing for granted and then all of a sudden realize, I mean, I read this sort of philosophical quote that wasn't pertaining to Jeff Beck, but just in general, that things have to have an ending in order for them to have value. I mean, if
Yes, I
something
agree.
just goes right,
Yeah.
right. So if something just goes on forever, then you don't really appreciate its value till it stops. So there is that, but yeah, so there's like I mean, the way I listen to David Bowie now is so different than the way I used to, because even the people that stop touring, there's still the chance that you're going to be able to see them live. I was lucky enough to see Jeff Beck 3 times, and they were all great. I saw him in '76 with Jan Hammer. I saw him at the Palladium in New York with Jan Hammer. That was great.
So I've got an LP in my collection. I think it's called With Jan Hammer,
Yeah,
the red LP.
is that a live album?
I think it is,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I haven't had a chance to put it on ever, so that's also in my queue.
yeah. That's great.
That's coming up for me. That's going to be new to me.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. I remember they set that up like that was one of the first records I heard that was mixed like a band. So you saw Jeff Beck was on the left and Jan Hammer was on the right, and it was just a mix that way. Like so physically you could see the band while you listened to it. And that was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, then I saw him in 1999 with Jennifer Batten. He was really, that was the other great thing about him, is that he would really shine the light on other people, and in the latter half of his career, a lot of those people were female, and so it was great. He introduced us to Jennifer Batten, to Tal Wickenfeld, you know, just the two girls from Bones UK,
Yeah.
Rosie Bones and Carmen, and yeah, I mean, he was just so generous that way, you know. And I mean, seeing him with Tal, that was just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about Ronnie Scott's. I
Yeah,
think she's in that show.
yeah,
And is that the one where Imogen Heap guests for a few tunes?
yeah, yep,
Yeah, you had said the other day that he really was a champion of performing and creating with females.
yeah. So
And
that's great. I mean, I have 7 sisters, so I can totally understand why he would do that. But still, it's admirable, and they were all. I mean, seeing their posts after he passed, it was really beautiful. And
you
Imelda May, same thing with her.
one of my heroes is Alex Lifeson from Rush.
Hmm.
And Rush were my number one teenage band. They're really the first band that I absolutely fell for. Became a diehard, wanted to collect everything. And the reason why I'm bringing them up is Rush did a covers album later in their career called Feedback,
Hmm.
and they did Shapes of Things
Oh yeah.
on it. I don't know if you've had a chance to hear it,
No, I'll look it up though.
but yeah, I'll look forward to hearing your thoughts. Like you said, Jeff Beck is one of those artists that's just impossible to emulate.
Mm,
So hopefully the track does something for you. But whatever your honest opinion is,
yeah.
we'll roll with it.
Okay, I'll let you know. Yeah. Well,
Well,
it's funny because his influence was more conceptual with all of us guitar players, because we couldn't copy him, but it definitely sort of pointed us in this direction where, number one, take chances, I mean, do stuff, try to break new ground, try to do stuff that people haven't done before, be melodic, I mean, be expressive. When you listen to Jeff Beck,
Expressive. Oh
yeah,
man,
oh my gosh. And the same thing with Peter Green, who was one of my old heroes, the original guitar player in Fleetwood Mac.
Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Green would play blues, but none of his notes were the same volume. I mean, you listen to people play blues and they just tend to blast through. Maybe they'll get quiet, but all the quiet stuff is the same dynamic. And then the loud stuff. But Peter Green, it was like when you're conversing, you'll emphasize some words and you'll get soft and you'll be thoughtful and Jeff Beck was the same way. No note was the same volume, and that's so unusual. I mean, it's so vocal, so expressive, so human, and to be able to do that with distortion and with whatever echo and stuff, and still have it sound so human is just an amazing accomplishment.
Well, we have covered everything that I very loosely had in mind to discuss. If I could just give a brief recap about his multi-channel stuff, just for surround enthusiasts watching.
Mm.
There are, I think, 5 albums available from CD Japan, hybrid super audio
Mhm.
CDs. So those are going to be from the quad master tapes,
Mhm.
and then also you get stereo uh, as well. Some of them do more for me musically than others. So I guess I would start with Wired,
Mhm.
and then there's the Analog Productions SACD of Blow by Blow. Number one recommendation from me, probably from you too, right, Mark?
Yeah, oh, for sure.
The Live at Ronnie Scott's Blu-ray sounds amazing, and to me, it's just a remarkable performance. And
Yeah,
then Roger
the
Waters,
Live at Hollywood Bowl Blu-ray is a fantastic. I think I recommended that to you because it's a
yes,
career retrospective. It starts with the Yardbirds and goes all the way through. So that's a really great sort of sample disc to sort of sample everything before you go back to the original recordings, I think.
I will finally go order it. I promise.
Oh, you haven't got it yet?
Uh,
Oh,
I I don't think I did. I am one of
yeah.
those types that I'm not exactly sure what I've ordered over the years, but I at least haven't sat down and watched it. So I will repent
Yeah.
for my own good. I'll make up for that. And then Roger Waters Amused to Death. I really love his guitar work on that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Uh, I'm sorry that you're grieving.
Yeah. Thank
I'm
you.
I'm feeling the loss through my friends such as yourself, and glad that I just have the motivation to dig into a lot of his work. That
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
silver
And you
lining.
know what? I mean, on the plus side, 78 it's a good run. He left a great body of work, the recordings are fantastic. So,
It was just so surprising,
oh
and such
man.
a rare illness.
Yeah.
And I think it evokes that reminder that any of us could go at any time.
I know. I know. So play every gig like it's your last, and one day you'll be right.
And yeah, and play every record
Yeah,
like you won't get a chance again,
that's right.
and tell your loved ones that you love them,
Yeah.
do good things for others. Well,
Well,
anyway, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. I intended quite a long time ago to do like a Jeff Beck in surround, you know, uh, video discussing all of the titles available, but just me sitting talking about Jeff Beck wouldn't be nearly as meaningful as you being a great musician yourself and really having a strong, meaningful connection to his work. So I appreciate you being vulnerable
Mm.
and sharing your heart.
Well, thanks, Mike, and thanks for shining a light on Jeff.
It is my joy, my sad my sad joy to do so. I'm starting to feel the heaviness of it
I know, Russ. Yeah.
just talking to you.
Moving on. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
probably time to wrap up this talk, and
Yeah.
so I appreciate your time. Appreciate putting yourself through some of this grief process with us.
Mm.
I really do deeply appreciate it.
Thanks,
And
Mike.
for everyone else watching, thanks for watching, and go enjoy some Jeff Beck
Yeah. In surround.
in surround and stereo and mono, headphones, giant speaker array. Just do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, my friend.
Yeah. Cheers, Mike.
Cheers.
Yep.